When we're looking at people, human beings, and trying to understand their behaviour and what drives them, one of the tools we can use is a tool called a DiSC profiling system. Now, DiSC profiling system refers to, it's a specific type of tool, but it really is referring to what is known in the psychology circles as four-quadrant theory. Now, four-quadrant theory came about with Socrates back in the day. Socrates or Hippocrates, one of them, came up with the idea that human beings, their behaviour falls into one of four quadrants, and that's what I've got on the chart here. Now, in these four quadrants, DiSC uses the words dominant, influential, steady, and compliant. There are other systems out there like colours. It uses different colours for these things, and then other systems like Myers-Briggs, which has falls similar into the four-quadrant theory, a little more detail, but still the same overriding principles. Now, so what I'm going to do in this video is show you what DiSC is and what these quadrants mean, and how do we use that in our businesses. How do we use it to help us and to help the teams that we work with. So first, to understand what each of these four quadrants are, essentially what we have is someone is either outgoing or they are reserved. And they are also either more task oriented or more people oriented. Now, it's important, I think, to outline here that we're saying that someone is either or. Well, that's not quite true. I mean, someone can be a mix of both. So this is very much a generalisation and a tool to show us, in theory, how human behaviour is and how someone might fall on this graph. So, for instance, if someone's extremely outgoing, they're going to be right up at the top end here. If someone is more reserved, they're going to be right at the bottom. But if they're in between, they're in between. So you can fall anywhere on this spectrum. The same with the task and the people side of things. But what DiSC is saying is that if someone's outgoing and task oriented, they're a dominant sort of individual. They're interested in results, bottom line results, and they're usually a pretty fast-paced person. They will make decisions very quickly. They're not going to want a whole lot of details around things. It's all about, give me the bottom line. What's the bottom line? They're going to be very direct individuals and speak very openly and candidly. Now, again, with these descriptors I'm giving you, they're all generalizations. If someone was a really what we call a high D, meaning they're right up here in the quadrant, the descriptors I just mentioned are going to be more pronounced. They're going to be very obvious. Versus if someone is still a D but maybe closer to the middle, those characteristics are not going to be as extreme. Now, the I for influential is again the outgoing personality, but more people oriented. These are your connectors, your natural salespeople, the life of the party, someone that really enjoys being in social environments and is comfortable being the centre of attention. That would be a generalised way of looking at the influential side of things. Then we've got S for steady. So again, people, still on the people side, but now we're on the more reserved side. So these are people who enjoy being around others and working with teams and with other people, but they don't really want to be the centre of attention. They're more comfortable to stay back and be part of the team, but just not be the driver. And then we've got those who are reserved, but are more task oriented. These are people who maybe are more comfortable working alone or individually. They're going to be very focused on details. Precision is going to be very important to them, and getting things right is going to be important. Now, with each of these styles, and have a think about where you are on here. That's a good way of sort of cementing this information. Think about where you are, and also where those who you know or those you work with, where would you put those people on the graph? Now, with each of these styles, different styles, and what we have, each one has its strengths, and each one has its weaknesses, if you like. Let's take someone who's a high D. Their strength is going to be decisiveness, their leadership, their drive. Their weakness might be teams, working with people, because they might just run off and do things and care less about what other people are doing behind them. On the I side, their strength is going to be connecting with people, being the social person. Being able to influence people is obviously a strength. The weakness with an I can be their attention to detail, their planning. Sometimes they can be a little scattered, a little all over the place. Someone who's S, steady, strength is going to be is steadiness, consistency. They're going to always be there. They're going to see a task through from beginning to end. They're going to be a little more structured. They're going to be someone you can really count on and rely on, a really good part of the team. One of the weaknesses or constraints of an S is conflict avoidance. They're very uncomfortable with conflict. They don't like to speak up when it's going to be controversial. They prefer just to go with the flow. And sometimes, because they don't speak up, they can bottle things up to a point where all of a sudden then they blow their top because it all gets too much. A D will never blow their top. Well, they might if they're just really that aggressive style person. But a D doesn't have to be aggressive, but they're going to speak their mind as it becomes apparent. They're not going to bottle things up so much. An I could also be conflict averse because an I likes to be liked, so they're not necessarily going to want to do things that are going to upset people because they like people to like them, as we all do, but I's more so. Then you've got your compliant C. Their strength is going to be, again, I said about the details, about getting things right, processes. If you want a critiquing eye to look over something, you'd get a C to come and look at it because they're going to have a very critiquing eye. Their weakness can be paralysis from analysis, like they think too much about it, I want to get it too right, and that prevents them from moving forward. And also speed at which they work. They might be slower because they want it all to be right moving forward. You can see with all of these strengths and weaknesses, there's no one quadrant here that's the right quadrant to be in. In fact, a great team is made up of all of these types of people. It's just recognising where the strengths are and where the weaknesses are. And this is an important point because when it comes to working as a team, sometimes conflict or resentment or lack of communication can happen because one person's strength is another person's weakness, and if we don't understand that inherent style of people, we can become very frustrated with other people's behaviour. We see this quite often when we have I's and C's on the same team. The I's want to talk and carry on and have fun, and the C's want to get down to it and get the details right. And if an I was in charge of a project, they would be less concerned about the details, which would drive a C nuts. These two can have conflict, the D and the C, because the D is so driven about results, come on, let's just get it done, and the C is sort of putting the brakes on saying, hang on, let's get the details right. Well, that can be that can be a natural state of conflict, bringing those two people together. So, how do we use this? Well, a couple of ways. With your existing team, we can use this for conflict management, helping each other to understand behavioural styles. We can use it for role selection, making sure we've got the right people in the right roles. If you've got a task that is, say, an admin function, requires a lot of accuracy, well, if you hire someone who's a really high I, you're probably setting them up for failure. Not to say they couldn't do it, but they're going to have to work really hard to make sure they can get it done the right way, versus someone who is more of a C-type nature. They're going to excel in the role naturally. They're not going to have to work they're going to work hard to make it happen. So role selection, conflict avoidance, we can also use it when selecting teams to make sure we've got a good balance. Some of everything to round out the team. And it's important if we do that we have education around this for the team to make sure there's no conflict or frustration that comes up. With teams or selecting new members for the team, very critical in your hiring process. When you're writing your ad or you're selecting the sort of person you want to have an understanding of what you want this profile to be. Do we want them to be sort of up here? If you're getting someone for sales, you might want them up around this quadrant here. Not to say someone down here couldn't do sales, but up here might be, again, less effort or more naturally inclined to cold calling or start talking with people who they don't know. So selecting people, and there's ways you can test this throughout the hiring process. You can do sort of a shortened cheats version, which gives you a rough idea of where someone is, and then you can do a more sophisticated online version, which is still pretty cost effective, but it gives you a much more detailed report. Sample report here. This report shows us value to the organisation, where their strengths are going to be, how you communicate with the person, things not to do when communicating with the person, and right through to the end where it gives you a graphical representation of where they are in each of the different areas, D, I, S and C. And the introduction to this tool is usually a paragraph or two that is a description of the person, and on this report we can see here description of the person, and I've found that when people do these, there's about a 95% accuracy. People are quite often freaked out by how accurate this report is. If you're hiring, I would highly recommend using this. If you've got a team of 50 people, then I probably, you might do this, but it might get a little bit expensive, but still can be very worthwhile. The other tool that's available to you regarding this, you can download from the tools section of my website under the client area tools. And it's a 3-page document. The first page is a bit of a guide on how to read people, how to work out where they fit on this chart. It takes you through step by step. The second page of that document is a little bit of a summary of the different style descriptors, and this can be a good one to use when writing ads for hiring people. You look at the sort of person you want up in the style descriptor here, and you can pick a couple of the words that resonate or describe the person you're looking for. Use those words in your ad, and you've got a better chance of hiring the sort of DiSC profile you're looking for. And the last one on this document, which I think is one of the most valuable tools, is a little summary that walks you through, what are the things that are most important to each profile, what are the major fears of each of the profiles, what are the major dislikes, how does each profile become when they're under pressure? As a buyer, what do they respond to? So what are their buying triggers? And then lastly, what's their decision style? And you can see for each of the D, I, S and C where they fall under those areas. And it's interesting because you look at it and you can see that major goal for a D is results and control. And then major fear, say for a C, is criticism of performance. So imagine a high D that is looking for results, get it done, and if they're communicating in a way that is natural for them, which we all do, we all communicate in our own style. If they're communicating with a C, that C is for sure going to take it as, hey, you're critiquing my performance, and they're going to shut down. So where a D is trying to get an outcome, what they're really doing is shutting someone else down. So understanding communication style is very important. And I said an important part there, that is we all communicate in our own style. And that's another way to use this tool. When we are working with others, we want to understand that how we like to receive information is how we're going to give information. So if we are, let's say you're a high C. A high C likes lots of details, going to speak very softly, speak a little slower, be a little more withdrawn, body language might be a little more closed. That's how they're going to communicate. Now if they're trying to influence, let's say a D, they're trying to influence a D, and understand most communication is about influence, well that D, as soon as they see the body language, as soon as they hear the slower voice, as soon as they hear lots of detail, they're going to switch off. So if you are that profile and you're trying to influence this profile, you've got to know, okay, I've got to step it up a little bit here. I've got to do things a little bit differently than I'm comfortable doing. Not be someone I'm not, but just recognizing if I don't, then I'm probably not going to connect with the other person. So the other area we can use DiSC is in sales. I talked about influence quite a bit, and obviously when it comes to sales, we have to be able to influence others. Well, knowing our own style and then knowing what the style is of our prospect can help us to speak in their language and use the style of communication that is going to work for them. I also mentioned, I'll repeat here, that it's not about becoming someone you're not. If you try and be this outgoing, flamboyant personality when that is just not the natural you, people are going to read that a mile off, and you're going to come across as not genuine. So you still have to be yourself, but maybe just elevate a little bit so you can sort of meet that person halfway, so they can see that you're trying, and that way you'll have more of a connection. So they're the key ways to use it. Using it with team, with conflict resolution, selecting correct roles and selecting good teams, like having a good broad rounding of each team member. Using it in selecting new team members, and then using it in sales. They're probably the three major areas that we can use it. And obviously you can find you can use this outside of work as well. I mean, human beings are human beings. Play around with it, have a look at as you have different interactions and you see things happening, take a look at why someone's responding a certain way to a situation, see if you can bring it back to a DiSC profile. This is certainly only one tool that makes up the human character. It's by no means the be-all and end-all. It is just a tool to help us understand and communicate, but a very important one. And when we understand it and we can sort of read people pretty quickly and have an understanding of what might be behind their behaviour, it helps us to interact and communicate. Have fun with it. Download the document I showed you there from the tools section of the website. And if you would like to check out the online tool, feel free to send me off an email and I can get that organised for you. Have fun with it.